And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. But before we get into this NBA recap, I just got a report saying that the Suns are ready to offer Jimmy Butler a 2-year, $121 million extension if they're able to trade for him. So it seems like that might be the go-to move for Jimmy Butler right now. And I was literally just talking about this like 15 minutes ago. And if they are willing to do this, then they're just going to have to hope that Bradley Beal does not use his no trade clause. But if they're able to get a trade done, then this might be a really huge shift in the NBA's Western Conference. It might have just gotten all that more competitive, and it's crazy how competitive this is. And also, in other reports, Zay Flowers is going to be out of the wild card round when the Ravens go up against the Steelers. This report came out 32 minutes ago, but I just saw this. So those are just some reports that I wanted to bring up. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this NBA recap. So we're going to start with the Knicks. They ended up beating the Raptors. They won 112-98. No Karl Anthony Towns in this one, no problem. OG Anunoby dropped 27 points. Josh Hart had 21 and 11. Oh, wait, no, I lied. There was Karl Anthony Towns in this one. I thought he was still injured. That's my bad. But Karl Anthony Towns ended up dropping 27 and 13. And on the Toronto side, obviously this team is still trying to tank for Cooper Flag so they could actually have a winning season. But so no need to really talk about that game all that much because again, the Knicks were going to be the favorites with or without Karl Anthony Towns. The Pistons, they ended up beating the Nets 113-98, and let's see here. Tobias Harris, he only had 9 points. Nobody really did a lot of scoring for the Pistons, but it was more so of a team effort. And for the Nets, Noah Clowney ended up dropping 29 points out of nowhere. But, of course, it was all for nothing. Now, the 76ers, they ended up beating Washington because, of course, they did. Washington is a really bad team. And Maxey had 29 points. There was no Joel Embiid in this one, no Paul George in this one either, but of course no problem. Kyle Kuzma only had 16 points, and the lack of Jordan Poole was also a big reason why Washington ended up losing in that game. Now, the big one, the Cavs, they ended up snapping the Thunder's 15-game winning streak and beat them 129-122 in the final box scores. Evan Mobley had 21 and 10. Jarrett Allen had 25 and 11. Donovan Mitchell only had 11, and Darius Garland only had 18. And they showed that they were able to go up against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's 31-point performance. Jalen Williams had 25 points in this game. And one thing that I will say, though, is that there should be a little bit of an asterisk because, again, there is no Chet Holmgren. But nonetheless, both of these teams are very, very competitive, and they both have a very good shot of making it to the NBA Finals. Now, the Bulls, they ended up losing to the Pacers. The Pacers won 129-113. Siakam had 26 points. Halliburton had 16 and 13. Thomas Bryant had 22 points. And on Chicago's side, Zach LaVine had 31 because, of course, he did. And, of course, he's still dropping 31 points on a meaningless squad. And Ash Owen went in the chat. He said he went on rants when he was Cincinnati's coach. Yeah, of course. But, again, you don't really, at least right now, you don't really, go flat out and say my players are soft. I don't think I've seen a coach do that. And anyways, back into the recap. The Pelicans, they still keep losing. And despite the fact that they have all of their good players in, they lost with CJ McCollum, with DeJounte Murray, no Zion Williamson, but still losing to the Blazers by 19 points is inexcusable, at least in my opinion. Denny Avdija had 26 points, and Shaedon Sharpe had 21 points. And on the Pelicans side, CJ McCollum had 23, and DeJounte Murray had 20 points. Now, going into the next game, the Nuggets, they ended up beating the Clippers 126-103. Russell Westbrook had a really good game in this one. He ended with 19, 8, and 6, and was able to shoot 8 for 16 from the field. 1 of 5 from 3, but again, he's Russ. We don't really expect him to shoot the 3 ball all that well. Jamal Murray had 21, 9, and 3. Let's see who else played well. Michael Porter Jr. had 19, 8, and 2. And that was basically all she wrote. Now, Norman Powell had 30 points, but it was all for nothing, especially when James Harden can only drop 16 points. Chris Dunn, for some reason, was playing 20 minutes, and he dropped 0 points. Harden was 5 for 15. Amir Coffey, the coffee shop, he was 2 for 11. And the rest of the Clippers, they just shot absolutely horrible from the field when going up against the Nuggets, and that's a recipe for disaster. And finally, the big game of tonight, well, not really the big game, but one of the most viewed games, the Spurs going up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Victor had only 2 highlights in this game where he hit a one-legged three-pointer and a crazy circus shot, and the rest of the game was terrible. He was 4 for 10, only had 10 points and 10 rebounds. A really bad performance for somebody with the high caliber and great play like Victor Wembanyama. Chris Paul had 18 and 7, but again, it wasn't enough to beat Giannis Antetokounmpo, who had 25, 16, and 8. Dame had 26 points along with 8 assists, and Brook Lopez also had 22 points. Chris Middleton has been moved to playing on the bench, and he most likely will not be back in the starting lineup. Portis was 2 for 12. Even despite this, they still were able to win rather comfortably, 121-105. And that's the whole recap. That's all that I have for these NBA games, and that's it for the show. So thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something you're dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box. If that's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. Either or really helps the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.